Hi, everybody. This is BJ Garrett with Christ-Centered Abortion Recovery and Education, and we are back with the new year on our very first Testimony Tuesday of 2021. And tonight I have my very dear friend, Athena. Athena, welcome to our Testimony Tuesday, and just introduce yourself for us.
Well, thank you. It's a joy to be here with you, BJ. My name is Athena Dean Holtz, and I am a publisher, author, speaker, abortion survivor, cult survivor, spiritual abuse survivor, former workaholic. Let's see what there's. There's a lot going on.
The list goes on. I tell people sometimes, I'm like, my resume really could get me on the Maury Povich show, but instead I do Christian ministry. So I think you can relate to that. So just really quick, Athena is actually the publisher of my book, Unwanted No More, and she's been instrumental in obviously getting my story out there. And so I thank her for that. But in the process of all of that, I learned that Athena is actually an abortion survivor. So Athena, let's just dive right in and take us back to that season of when you chose abortion and just share your journey with us, if you don't mind.
Sure. Well, I come from a non-Christian home completely, and a lot of trauma in my growing up years. So I was a sexual abuse survivor as a 5-year-old, went off into, lots of promiscuity and drugs and whatever, just hard charging, wild child. My poor parents. I mean, I think back and go, oh Lord, I drove them crazy. But I ended up getting into a relationship with a married man who kept promising me he was going to leave his wife and we were going to run off into the sunsets. And he was a big famous musician. And so I was just, taken and smitten and ended up being pregnant. And I was like, I am going to have this baby. We're going to do this thing. And of course, the minute he found out I was pregnant, he started backpedaling. And my dad, not a Christian, he just said, well, no, having a baby would ruin your life. So we'll take care of it. And this was actually before abortion was legal. So this was like 71. Yeah. And so, honestly, I don't even remember him taking me there. And the only thing I remember from that moment in my life was the next day where I was deathly ill, and it was like toxemia. And I just remember laying there in this, I didn't live at my parents' home anymore. So I was in my brother's bedroom and I was laying there just raging fever and just really kind of thinking about my life and going, I remember making a vow at that moment, like, okay, I am never going to let anyone use me again. That was my vow. And whoa, that sent me on a trajectory of basically controlling everything, being the user instead of the person who was used. Really hard. That really hardened my heart.
Yeah. I can so relate to that in so many ways, obviously from abortion, but also when I was working in the sex industry. And just like, I share all the time, with each dollar, with each set, my heart just got harder and harder and harder. And there's this sense of control and power that comes from that, because no longer can you be hurt. Once you built that wall around your heart, especially that icy cold heart, the icy cold wall, it gives you this sense of power, but it's also at the same time so defeating emotionally. I mean, you don't really realize it because you think like you're in control and people can't hurt you. And so you have all of this power, right? But the reality is that's not always exactly how it plays out. So how did that play out for you, having the icy cold wall around your heart?
Well, it moved me into, initially, right after that was when I started I moved out to California, started hanging around with important people, celebrities, worked for Helen Reddy's husband, who was her manager, worked um, with just other people that were in the entertainment industry, which I kind of found I was in the in crowd. So that kind of kept my pain numbed, and ended up getting sucked into Scientology at that point in my life, and just began a life of um, extreme workaholism. I was very successful no matter what I did, whether I was working at the Celebrity Center at the Church of Scientology, which I'm using church loosely. They're not a church, they're a scam. But, just I found myself moving toward using what I was good at, which was work and success. I mean, that came naturally to me. And so I just dove into another relationship that ended up being physically abusive.
Okay.
So put up with that. I mean, this was in the 80s where late 70s. It was really actually mid to late 70s where there was no such thing as domestic violence, or no one ever talked about that. And it wasn't a word. It wasn't even, I'm sure it was happening, but nobody ever, it didn't have any credibility. And so I'd never even heard of a male beating up his wife. I mean, that just was so foreign to me. So I put up with it for about 4 years until basically I was nursing our 6-month-old, and he broke my arm while I was nursing.
Wow.
That's what I said. I'm done. I'm out of here. Bye for now. And went on to, a year later, marry another person involved in Scientology who was, more emotionally abusive than he was physically abusive. But I just really, my medication of choice was work and success. And that is really where I went to, I didn't want any of that stuff to come up. I mean, it's not like I consciously thought that.
Right.
That's, I was protecting my heart, and work was the way I got my, I felt good about myself. I didn't, I mean, I remember one time saying, well, I'm not messed up. I mean, I haven't had a hard life. It's like, Lord help me. I mean, I really was in denial big time.
So I'm just curious, do you feel like, and it's not always the case, but often when I look at these, this kind of spiraling, catastrophic issues that you've expressed, do you think that it goes back to your abortion? And was your abortion ever a thought in any of that? Like as you were working your way through and kind of diving into your own little world of success?
I had pretty much blanked out my the sexual abuse as a child and the abortion. Those were completely, I mean, I almost think that's something that God gives us, the ability to, have this veil or something, because I didn't even remember it until after I became a believer. And that's when God began to bring back memories of the maid when I was 5 years old, and then the abortion, even though I still don't remember the actual act of the abortion. I did in my 40s begin to remember that day after, and walk through some healing for the abortion. But I'm sure it was connected, but I was completely clueless to that.
Yeah. I think that is so common. And obviously I get to work every day with women who have had abortions. And so often as we go through our program, and our program is just a pretty intensive Bible study, as you know, but it just, as they begin to work through that grief process in the healing and in the anger in a safe environment, And then these memories come back, and we walk them through that journey, not to torture them, but to really, I kind of feel like you can't heal from what you don't acknowledge. And so we walk them through this journey of healing, and it's pretty painful. I mean, I wish I could be like, oh, it's just, rainbows and lollipops. It's not, it's tough. It's hard. Abortion's ugly. It's destructive. And the pain and the consequences are real. But so many women, I hear that all the time, though, is that, we think we're fine. I thought I was fine when I was serving in full-time ministry, on staff as a missions director at a local church. And, and no one knew my story. I really thought I was fine. And kind of like for you, but for my second abortion, I had literally just wiped that day completely from my memory. It was as if it had never happened, literally. And, and so it just, sometimes I feel like, deception is a powerful tool. And I do believe that God does allow us to really compartmentalize some of those things, because the trauma we just can't really face in certain seasons of our life. And so when we do get the opportunity to begin with his grace and with his love and the support of others, begin to work through that, it's really life-changing. So how do you feel, and again, and I know you've been healed, from your abortion, and your story is very public, and you share very openly all of the dynamics of your story, but specifically with abortion, how important would you say it is for a woman to get help targeted on that issue?
Absolutely, because I just think, I don't know, with the Me Too movement, more women are feeling comfortable to admit that they were sexually abused and that kind of thing. But there still is such shame around the whole abortion thing, especially when you think about all the women in church, who have never told anyone, because it's not safe to do that. And that's a huge, huge stumbling block for them in their faith, to understand God's faithfulness and his forgiveness and his goodness, when we will finally come face to face with what we did and own it and repent and allow his healing to come in. But it doesn't happen, because you go, I mean, some churches you go in and they're so anti-abortion, you feel like, how could I ever admit that I did this? Or, it's like saying anything about struggling with anything is kind of like you're showing you don't have enough faith.
Right. And it's I have this love-hate relationship with some of that, because we have to have we should hate abortion. It's ugly. Yep. But somehow we have to portray this idea that we hate abortion and the consequences that comes from abortion, but still not shoot the people while they're down that are hurting from abortion. And our churches, as you know, are filled with men and women who have had abortions. And it's been my experience, and you can maybe comment on this too, but for those women, like for you and I, we were not Christians when we chose abortion. And for some reason, it seems for those who were not believers in Jesus Christ, when they chose abortion, when they accept that forgiveness, even though we still struggle with the act of abortion, somehow we are able to heal easier from that. But those women who know Jesus Christ at the time of their abortion, they know the truth. They have the most difficult time really recovering and healing and receiving the forgiveness of Jesus, because they chose abortion as a believer in Jesus. Do you have any experience or comments on that, or do you a different take?
Well, I mean, we were a big part of the Unplanned movie.
Yes.
My Redemption Press did the healing devotional that was a companion to the movie. And I have just seen, I've seen that really open up the conversation, and really still, even when they did know the Lord, they did know it was wrong. They, that seemed to soften hearts to the point of being willing to to admit it and want help and ask for help. But I'm sure there's still a whole lot of women and men who were complicit, who are just still hardening their hearts and not wanting to go there because it's painful.
It's painful. It's easier in a sense to not acknowledge the truth and the reality of what came from the abortion. And so if we just turn a blind eye and we don't acknowledge it, we shove it down deep, which I did for 2 decades almost, and just don't acknowledge it, then I'm really okay. But really I was hurting. And in my opinion is until you really deal with all of the junk, and Satan is so clever, Athena, and I know you agree with this. He's so clever because if he can keep us silenced, then he keeps us not productive for the kingdom. So as soon as we begin to break those silences on the sexual abuse and on the abortion issues and on the cults that we can get wrapped up in, and until we begin to break the silence, he has somewhat control, and we're never truly free in Christ to be 100% effective in the kingdom's work until we let go of those secrets. And not everyone is going to be on a podcast or a channel like this to share publicly, but it can look differently. I believe that it can just be one-on-one, but as soon as we begin to break those chains of silence, then true healing begins to take place.
Well, and that's where people and women will resonate. I mean, they're not going to resonate with us being superstars and everything's great in our life and we're on a mountaintop all the time and we have no issues at all. They are going to resonate with us way more when we're authentic and talk about our struggles and admit what we've been duped into believing, the deception we've believed, whatever the situation was. When we're open about that, it not only do they connect, but they all of a sudden they feel like they might have some permission to admit their own struggles. And that's the first step. We have to get to that place where, guess what? Christians are broken and messed up and we need to humble ourselves a little bit and talk about those struggles, because that's when God helps us. That gives us something to give others.
Yeah. That's what I love so much about what you do. And of course, you have your hands in lots of projects, I know, but specifically with Redemption Press, because it's almost like, that if you've got a book from Redemption Press, that it's by a Christian author and it's going to have a Christian theme. Now, and I've obviously not read all of the bazillion books you guys have, and they're not all Christian books necessarily or Christian stories, but they're all by godly people who love the Lord. And you're very, very firm on only publishing by Christian authors. And I love that so much. Before we go, and we have a few minutes, but before we go, I want to make sure that everyone can connect with you, because you have a YouTube channel. Obviously, Redemption Press is, your publisher. Give us all of the avenues where people can connect with you and potentially, whatever they need from Athena Dean Holtz and what you provide.
All right. Well, actually, my personal website, which is athenadeanholtz.com. If you go there, there's a link to my YouTube channel, my podcast that I do for the All Things, which you were on the debut show with Liz Curtis Higgs in February.
Yes,
of
I was.
Yes. But also, it has a link to Redemption Press on there, to our She Writes for Him, the different things that we're doing with that. So all of the connections pretty much are at my website. So athenadeanholtz.com. I'm very active on Facebook. Still haven't figured out Instagram. So if you want to find me on a social media, that's where you would find me as well.
I love that. And just a quick plug, because I'm so excited for the She Writes for Him conference, the writers conference that you have. Let's give a shout out to that really quick, because you just don't know who's watching this tonight that may need that encouragement. And right now you're giving a really great special, but of course, by the time this airs, that special will be over. So
Right.
sorry,
Well, what
spoiler
we are
alert.
doing, March 19th and 20th, we have our second virtual She Writes for Him Writers Conference. And this year we've titled it Braveheart because, again, we're focusing on helping women write about their hard stories, whether it's devotionals or whether it's a children's book or whether it's a memoir, however they're going to use what God has redeemed. We want to help them and equip them to do that. And so it's a 2-day virtual conference, Friday, Saturday. We're actually going to have our 2 keynote speakers are Sheila Walsh and Allie Worthington, who have both gone through some really hard things and have written about those hard experiences and the healing that Christ can bring. And so we're super excited about that. We actually even have a pre-conference special that's also available. So we've got a mini boot camp that's 2 days before the conference starts. So we're doing some really cool stuff with that this year, in 2021. The one we did in 2020 at the beginning of the pandemic was a life changer for so many people because we were all in shock with the pandemic right when it started, and God just showed up and did some pretty amazing things. So we expect him to do the same again.
That is so exciting. And I hope that I'll get to attend this year. I did not attend last year. And last year, I just thought, I cannot do anything virtual. We had just kind of made the transition of everything being virtual with our ministry and board meetings. And I was just like over it. Now I'm back and I'm good. But like the idea of a virtual conference, I was just like, please just drive me off a cliff. Don't make me do that. And after the fact, though, because somehow I was still able to connect with lots of people that were at the conference, or I was already connected with lots of people that went to the conference. And I'm like, I'm so upset I missed that. And Tammy Whitehurst, actually, she was one of them. She's like, girl, you missed a phenomenal conference. Like, So I don't want to miss it again. But if you are, if you just have a story, and it doesn't have to be, all tragedy. I love the stories where God has reigned clearly throughout your life and protected you from tragedy. That's a story to tell also, I just want to share again, just a shout out to Redemption Press in general. They were instrumental in my story, obviously being published, and my entire journey working with your staff, from my writing coach and the editors, from every single minute of that year was phenomenal. And I mean, tonight I'm getting to go to this, book bonanza and do an event tonight because of Redemption Press. So I have a story to tell. I highly recommend Redemption Press and the She Writes for Him Writers Conference. So all right, as we close out, just any last kind of shout outs, anything you want to say to the woman or the man for that matter watching tonight to just encourage them or whatever you want to say.
Well, God never wastes our pain. And, it's a hard thing to say, okay, I'm going to quit ignoring it. And I'm going to try and wrap my arms around it and say, okay, God, do what you want to do with that peace in my life, that hard place in my life. Because when you let him in, he can use it to do so many amazing things, not only to heal you. I mean, it's not just a selfish thing, but it's how you're going to be able to help others because they're going to be able to relate to that pain in you. And I don't know, I've always in the past liked to just talk to the hand. I don't want to go there, but I found the value in really facing our pain and allowing God in.
Yeah,
so
I love that.
For you to do that.
Well, thank you so much. I will include Athena's website in the show notes for this and in the comment section. But so this is BJ Garrett signing off with my dear friend, Athena Dean Holtz. And just remember that no matter what you have done and no matter what's been done to you, there is always hope and healing in Jesus Christ. God bless you all. Thanks for joining us.
Mm-hmm.